guys, welcome to episode 4 of Daddy Chat. And here with me, I've got Sai Megara. I did get the last name. I did get it right. Right. The amazing Jack the Ripper enthusiast, which is a definite hobby, but I can't say much. I'm obsessed with Alexander the Great. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Megan. Some of you might know me as History of London from TikTok. Bit too interested in, London's gory elements, such as Jack the Ripper, plague pits, that kind of vibe. Just dead people, really.
There is, I mean, obviously London, being the capital city of any nation in the world, is going to have some interesting aspects to its history. But London really does. I mean, it was, obviously founded by the Romans. It's burnt down by Boudicca, which is I love the fact that as a nation, the person who burned down that city became the symbol of a hero for the city of London. There's a statue of Boudicca in London, isn't there? I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And apparently her ghost haunts King's Cross Station. So,
really?
Yeah, where Harry Potter runs through that wall? Apparently it's right there where allegedly she's buried. And she's in the tunnels just charging along. So,
that would make sense. She definitely had some unfinished business. The story. I have to stop myself because I can already sense my brain going, tell the story about it. No. We're here to learn about very particularly Jack the Ripper. But I want to start off with the video you posted the other day, or by the time this goes out in a couple of months, it'll be a little while ago. But the video you posted the other day about Springfield Jack. So I believe that the sightings of him ended in 1930s around the area. He was very end of the Victorian era. So why? What has actually happened in more recent sightings with Springfield Jack?
So apparently, the sightings ended in 1904 in Liverpool, of all places.
Really?
At first, it all started in London, and then it went as far as Aldershot, the military garrison town, and up in Liverpool, and then it just stopped. And I personally, not to be a boring individual, but I think that it was mostly just sort of media frenzy and hysteria, and there wasn't much going on, and people just saying things for attention, as they do. But the 2012 sighting took place, I think, in a park in London. I cannot for the life of me remember which one. And it was a family that saw it, and they said, oh, well, he looked just like, the description of Springfield Jack, which is, the red eyes, breathing flames, basically looked like a demon, and was just bounding along and jumping and running and just unnatural movements.
That's, especially considering the actual legend of Springfield Jack is almost always exclusively targeted young women, late at night. So it's interesting that it's a family in this new sighting. Obviously it could be a copycat. There's an amazing mission in Assassin's Creed Syndicate where you have to chase after Springfield Jack, and it's infuriating. Because obviously you're climbing over London rooftops of London. A lot of people hate the climbing in that game. I love it. You're climbing over rooftops of Victorian London, which is obviously my dream. Anyways, I'd love to go back in time and go through, meet Queen Vic. And it's this creature's just jumping back and forth. And in the end, it turns out it's like a Scooby-Doo episode. You mask this random guy, and I was like, how? He's just jumping 40 foot in the air. But that was funny. I do like the story of Springfield Jack. It is because it's as far as I know, he never killed anyone, did he?
No, he just used to claw at people and assault them, basically.
Yeah.
So he used to rip at women's dresses and leave all big scratch marks on them. And that sort of thing. No one actually died.
Yeah, it does sound like sort of, you tell kids about the boogeyman and that's why you have to go to sleep. It sounds a little bit ominously like authority figures being you don't want to go out late at night, ladies, because the Springfield Jack will get you. There probably was some truth to those earlier sightings. Like you say, it was hysteria, and hysteria builds things up. And so there probably was some truth. There probably was some weirdo that was going around slashing ladies' clothes, because there is always weirdos going around slashing up ladies' clothes. The amount of times, obviously living in the UK, we've definitely met our fair share of weirdos on trains and stuff. It's always the trains. It's never, well, a couple on buses. It's always, especially whenever I go to London, they're always just this, and it's always like certain stations. It's like they're always just weird stuff. I'd rather meet the ghosts in all honesty. I'd rather meet the ghosts.
No, definitely. I mean, I obviously make videos about haunted tube stations, but I've never seen anything suspect at a tube station in terms of like supernatural occurrences. But I remember one time I was on the Victoria line and I had some crackhead chase me down the tube carriage saying, you know, you look like a lady of the night. He didn't use that word. It was more of a misogynistic slur, but we won't go there. And saying that he was going to murder me and all this. And, you know, I felt like I was being pursued by Spring-Heeled Jack himself.
It's always some interesting character. I can't say as I've ever been pursued or called a lady of night, but I've definitely had some weirdos like come up and try and tell me weird stories. I don't know why. They feel like they can confess their life stories. Like one time I felt like one guy was like, I felt like throwing my best friend in front of my train. I was like, huh? And I just looked at my mate.
Just a random stranger.
Yeah, and they just it's like it's a gift. I have it on Nights Out as well. I have people tell me their life stories, but they're never that bad. It's always the weirdos on the tube.
Yeah.
So you say you've never actually seen anything weird on the tube, but have you? Like, where do the stories you find out come from them if you've never noticed anything yourself?
So when I sort of launch into famous ghosts in famous places in London, I usually go for books, and there's some documentaries, really good documentaries, like the Ghosts on the London Underground, which is just absolutely fantastic. I think it was made in like 2002, something like that, and that's, you know, really good because it's looking at sort of TfL workers and their experiences of ghosts on the tube. In terms of my own experiences of ghosts, I live in a haunted house.
Same.
Yeah. So I can't exactly disclose where it's located, but all I can say is that there are dead bodies in my back garden. So that kind of explains why.
Not on that level. When I say haunted, I meant like some things like move in the night and I feel watched every now and then. I don't mean I have had some ghastly experiences, which I remember bringing up on one of your live streams, and you was like, no, we don't claim the energy from these comments. It's very funny. But that must be interesting living in a fully fledged haunted house.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's weird because sometimes I forget about it, and it's gotten better since I've started doing more research into the supernatural. It's like I can just sort of live with it, and with me, if I can understand it, I can control my emotions surrounding it.
Yeah.
But before that, you know, when I was little, I used to see the silhouette of a little old lady in the bathroom across the hallway from me. And I used to cry and beg my parents, please let me sleep with the door shut, because I used to see her walking towards me, but never getting beyond that point of the bathroom doorway. And in this bedroom used to be my sister's bedroom. And she was brushing her teeth once when she was about 13. I was just a glint in my father's eye at that point. And basically, she's brushing her teeth and her radio turned on in here, just out of the blue. She's panicked and the door's gone downstairs, and it was the daughter of the lady across the road who came to pick my sister up to take her to school. And she said, I think there's someone in my room. You know, the radio's gone on, blah, blah, blah. I'm really frightened. I don't want to go in there. So this girl, she goes up and she sees the corner of my bed, a little boy peering over the edge of the bed.
No.
Like with like hair just all messed up, really big circles under his eyes. And she said to my sister, I did see something, but I'm not telling you until we're out of the house. And, you know, when she got my sister to school and everything, they were waiting at the school gates. And this girl, she drew what she saw. My sister didn't sleep for about 2 weeks.
I mean,
so obviously that was next to her bed.
Sure. Wait, so she didn't call the police or anything? Like, be like, there's some kind of little boy in the house, baby.
Not. This is why. But then again, my sister said she was chased through Brixton by a badger, so I never know what to believe with her.
To be fair, I've been chased by. I was walking home from a night out with a friend once, and he lived by a load of woods. And as we're walking home, this badger's just sort of walking on the other side of the street, and then we look at this badger and it's looking at us, and then we notice it's speeding up, and we're just like, we it was like that, like it could have just been walking past, but it was also, I don't really want to wait to find out and see what's happening with the badger, so we just sort of pelted it down the road, turned the corner, we saw the badger going the other way, and yeah. That was a fun experience. Badgers are evil little creatures. They're
vicious.
They're not as cute. Yeah, I remember when I was little, I was like, oh, they're like Roly Mo on the Fimble. They're not like Roly Mo on the Fimbles. They do. Yeah, they will hurt you if you get close enough to them. I mean, ghost wise, I'd say my creepiest experience was the one I told you on my live stream, where I remember waking up. Well, sort of like half sort of fog. You know when you're like groggy and you sort of like turn over. And I remember seeing it was like curtains draped over my bed because I was in bunk beds with my brother. And then it sort of came into focus, and it was like this figure that didn't really have shoulders. They were like sort of like narrowed down. So it was like very, very I don't know if this is rude to say or not. Very effeminate shoulders. I don't know if I'm going to get cancelled for saying that. We'll find out. But that's the only way I could describe it as a child. And when it came up to the face, it was very like sort of circular, and it came off to a point, like almost like a cartoon. And then there was no facial feature. There was no lumps where things were meant to be. It was just blank. Like absolutely blank. However, and it was like I knew it was staring at my brother because the way the face was angled, and then the blank face just turned down to me. So somehow it was looking, and obviously I did put the kid, and I just threw the covers over my head, and I was like, no, and I was like, it's fine because now it will be gone because I was just imagining it, and I pulled the covers back, and it was still there. And to this day, I can't explain. Like, normally when you see stuff like that, you put your head under the covers and it's gone because it was just like a glint of light or something. And for some reason, my answer to it wasn't to scream for help. I just put my head back under the covers, wrapped myself, and was like, if I sleep, it will go away. I don't know what the logic was there, but as good job 5 or 8, how old was I? I probably must have been about 6 or 7. So good job 7-year-old. 7-year-old me. That was good survival instincts. Glad you would have got us out of trouble.
Oh my god!
But now onto the bulk. The bulk. I think we got big about 13 minutes. So the bulk of what we're going to talk about. Your favourite topic, Jack the Ripper. How did you get into Jack the Ripper? It's it's the ultimate true crime story if you think about it for the UK.
Do you know what? I cannot remember. I think. Like, I was never really big on it, but I think it's the fact that no one knew who it was. And that's what makes everyone love the story, because everyone loves to play detective. Yeah. My dad has, he's ex-police, and he was like an inspector when he left. So he's pretty high up, but he has so many books on just crime in general. Like, I've borrowed like 4 of his books on like gangs in London, that sort of thing. But he's got a bunch of books on Jack the Ripper, and he was always watching documentaries about it and that sort of thing. And I, toddled over. I was like, what's this? Sat down, enjoyed it. And I just, we studied it briefly at school. And I ended up writing at 16 an article in which I kind of posed my own original theory, which is the police officer theory, which I've never heard anyone else speak about. And funnily enough, since I've made that video on TikTok about, was Jack the Ripper a police officer, now everyone's saying that it's a police officer. And when I've said, oh, that's my own original theory that I came up with, you must have seen my video, they go, no, this theory existed long before that. No, because I've seen no trace of it online beyond this article that I've written. So
that's the thing. People will always try and claim stuff either for their own, or that they discovered it independently, so it's still kind of their thing. They don't want to relinquish that control. Yeah. But that's like I think that just comes from the everyone gets a medal generation that we're a part of.
Pretty much,
everyone wants their everyone wants their voices heard, which we don't all get our voices heard. It's just a sad fact of life. But to avoid getting too political, no, we don't get political on this channel, even though every podcast I've done has actually no, last episode didn't. It was just mainly episode 1 when I was moaning about the Soviet Union for like an hour and a half straight without Daedalus. I don't know if you've seen that one. It was so funny.
Mean, don't get me started on politics because I'll never stop. But on the whole, everyone gets a medal topic with the whole Jack the Ripper thing. One of these people in my comments who was berating me for daring to claim that I came up with the police officer theory. She said, it's my theory because this is why, he was police officer. And she basically listed the script word for word from my bloody video. I was like, that's my video. You just told me.
It encapsulates I've got to be very careful because I'm trying to be good so that the clock app doesn't keep shadow banning me. They shadow banned me for a little while because I was moaning about the fact, because they shadow banned me when I went into the Creator Fund, and then when I came out and I was moaning about it, I noticed I was still shadow banned, so I was like, okay, we'll keep quiet, and now they've sort of unshadow banned me. So I was like, okay, you've bribed me in silence with views. That just encapsulates TikTok as a whole.
Pretty much.
TikTok is basically YouTube back in like 2015, 2016. Like, I remember the incredibly toxic phase of YouTube.
Like the Zoella phase.
Oh, the Zoella Advent Calendar. The Zoella Advent Calendar. All of the Americans watching are currently like, what the fuck is the Zoella Advent Calendar? The Zoella Advent Calendar was the biggest controversy in the UK for a better part of 2 or 3 months. And it was all thanks to Jackmate. Jackmate's video on that was hilarious.
I never saw it until the other day. And I was like, so this is what it was all about.
Yeah, no.
And I was like, fascinated.
That video kick-started, and I always knew I was going to take it off the rails. Every single podcast video I've done so far has gone off the rails at some point. Never this early, though. 17 minutes in is early. But, it just set off a chain reaction. Zoella and her fiance now, I don't know. I mean, he then got into trouble because he did that living off £1 for a day, and he went, oh, but I couldn't quite do it because I went into the shop and there was like a new top I wanted, and he had like an entire shopping haul, and I was like, what do you mean there was a top you wanted? And he spent like £7,000 in the top in this shop, and he was like, oh, but it doesn't really count because it's not food.
Oh, well, just say that to all, the homeless people who are living on 20p a day.
If that.
Some people.
But, anyways, before we sidetrack too much and we get cancelled by various YouTubers much, much bigger than us that have got teams of
lawyers. End up with a lawsuit.
Oh, yeah. We've got teams of lawyers. Can you imagine that? That's how we go viral, is because Zoella sues us. So I don't want to be sued by Zoella. If that's how I go viral, I'll cry. Zoella sues history, you TikTokers. Anyways, Jack the Ripper. So why do you think it is a policeman?
Gosh, I'm gonna have to cast my mind back now to all the stuff I wrote. So effectively, if we look at, say, the uniform, it was black serge, so it's designed to soak up the blood. So it's mainly sort of for context, the fact that nobody would expect it to be a police officer, and if it was, nobody would really, like, he's in the right place, the right position.
Yeah.
To easily be like, oh, the blood's not showing, or if there is maybe blood in his hands, oh, well, I found her. I was just trying to kind of put her insides back inside her, sort of thing, in the street, as you do. They knew each other's beats, so he'd know if he was going to be disturbed, and what times. And obviously they knew the city like the back of their hand. They were also trained in sort of the medical field because they actually manned ambulances at this point, and they used to be present at autopsies as well. So, I know some people say, oh, well, it's still not good enough because some of the stuff was very, there was a lot of precision that went into these surgical removals is not a word, removals of ovaries and wombs and so forth. But, not to go on a tangent here, but this kind of brings me back to the fact that, there's the canonical five, but there were other killings that people didn't put down to Jack the Ripper because they were so slapdash, and the canonical five were very very precise and very sort of surgical, which makes me wonder, were the others Jack the Ripper victims too, but he was just kind of working out how to do various things and kind of perfecting it? Because Mary Kelly's, which was, she was the last victim, I've wondered if she was a Jack the Ripper victim at all, because he just went ham on her. He slashed her face to the point where it wasn't recognizable. It wasn't precise. It was just she was gut like a fish all over her bed, and it was just appalling, really. And it was also, it wasn't in the street, it was in her home. So that makes me wonder as well, was that Jack the Ripper? Or if it was he just gearing up for that final kind of...
See, I think that for me, because there was one theory that it was a member of the royal family at one point, but that's every British conspiracy, is the royal family will fit in there somewhere.
I love the royals. Leave them alone.
Yeah, same. Good old Queen Liz and cancelled. There we go. Yeah, no, but I do have a little bit of a soft spot for the royals. I won't deny it. I mean, I haven't. To be fair, I've been very open. I'm very open about my opinions, but I've entirely lost my track. But so obviously, as we know, the royals were lizard people and definitely were Jack the Ripper. But no. So, what do you think about the royal theory? Because I've always thought that you're going to have some weirdos in every family, and obviously, European royalty especially did quite literally like to keep it in the family. So there probably was a few diseases that they had within them that might send someone off on a little bit of a murder spree. So, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's complete and utter balls in my face, really. Not to be controversial here. So the suspect in question was Albert. I believe it would have been Victoria's son or grandson. Can't remember. But I do recall one of his biographers researched whether or not he was in London at the time of killings, and he wasn't. So he had a pretty solid alibi, although it was commonly believed that he most likely did contract syphilis from a prostitute, which drove him mad, which would have given him motive. So, as much as I do think it's balls in my face, there's no harm in exploring these theories, in my opinion, and weighing them up.
I mean, I think for me it would make perhaps the most sense, because that would be the easiest to cover up.
Yeah, definitely. For someone in power.
Yeah, because there's many times. I mean, that would also play into, obviously it could be a policeman, because there was many times in the, obviously I will admit I'm nowhere near an expert at Jack the Ripper. I know the baseline stuff, but from some of the stuff I've read and seen, there was quite a few times when they stopped, let the trail run cold a little bit, where they seemed to be getting close and then just went, no, we'll just hold off a bit, which makes me think perhaps they did know, there was a lot of police corruption. I mean, especially in that point in time, it was bribes were rife. So I think that it definitely was a member, perhaps, of the aristocracy of some level, or a rich Victorian businessman.
Yeah, definitely. It is plausible. I mean, even tying in with the police officer theory, so the Freemasons obviously had a lot of important wealthy figures and businessmen and so forth.
Yeah.
Plus the police element within the Freemasons, it's a really big thing in the police. And there was kind of so I made a few videos about this a while ago on TikTok about the Freemason theory. And next to one of the bodies, I can't remember which one it was, may have been Catherine Eddowes, don't quote me on that. There was some graffiti on the wall saying the Jews are not to be blamed for everything, or something, or are to be blamed for everything. I'm again, I can't remember, I'm a shit historian right now, but it was effectively Jews was spelt Juwes, which means, like, people assumed it meant the Jewish community, but many think that it was actually a reference to Freemasonry, so the Jews being jubilum, jubilo, and another one, jubilar maybe, I don't know, but effectively the police then removed this graffiti and scrubbed it out and got rid of it, so they destroyed evidence as well, which is really interesting if you do think, could it have been a Freemason, and could the police have been covering up for them?
I don't think, because obviously one of the little podcast episodes I did with Aidan Mattis, who is a Freemason.
I pissed him off now.
No, you sure? But that's what makes me immediately discount the Freemason theory, because they're not. From now I know. Oh, there we go. We've got 10 minutes. Right. Okay. It's right. We'll cut off and then I'll just slice it together. But the reason I discount the Freemason theory is because it is basically just the secret organisation where people chill out. Obviously, a lot of it's secret, but I don't think it's. If they are going to do anything secretive, I don't think it's going to be kill a load of ladies of the night to keep it YouTube friendly.
No.
I don't think that would be their mission. I wouldn't surprise me if it did take the anti-Semitic route, because, I mean, let's be real, historically, when people are mad, like, oh, look, the crops have failed. Should we be reasonable and believe it's because it's been really hot and there's a drought? No, let's kill all the Jews.
Let's blame the Jews. Yep. Yeah, it's awful. It's terrible.
Or like, it's either the Jews or let's burn some women for being witches. Although again, the witch thing apparently wasn't as bad as it's been made out in modern culture. Apparently, we didn't actually burn, I think it was in England we didn't burn as many people. It might have been really bad in Germany. It was one of the two. But then again, it wouldn't surprise me if it was Germany. Joking to all the Germans out there. It's fine. This is why I prefer YouTube, because I can get away with my spicier joke. I still have to be careful, but I think I can get away with that joke. That'll be fine.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, the Germans, they're renowned for their amazing sense of humour. Yeah.
There's a Robin Williams interview somewhere on the internet, rest his soul, where he was being interviewed by the Germans, and this German interviewer goes, "Why do you think that the world believes the Germans don't have a good sense of humour?" And Robin Williams, without missing a beat, turns around and goes, "Do you think it's maybe because you killed all the funny people?" It's one of the best interviews in history. I
can imagine him saying it as well. Oh, bless him.
Yeah, and the German interviewer, without missing a beat, just went, "No, I don't think so." Obviously, completely missing the joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that is so. I've completely lost my train of thought again. I need to actually have a proper train of thought I follow rather than just going with the flow. Yeah,
constantly. Don't worry.
I am the most easily distracted person in the world. Like, I'll be editing a video and then my phone will go and I'll be like, "Oh, I'll just check this message," and then 2 hours later I'm like, "What happened? Where am I?"
Yeah, it's awful, isn't it?
Like, yeah, I always say I black out when I'm drunk. I black out when I'm like just living. Yeah. But with Jack, obviously we've gone over quite a few of the theories. So, what on earth could you think could have compelled him or her? To be fair, we don't actually know. It could have been her. What do you think compelled them to take such aggressive actions against innocent young women, really?
So it's hard to say, because it depends on each theory. So obviously with the midwife theory, there is the idea that, I mean, personally, I think the midwife theory is just misogyny at its finest, because it's the whole, wise woman, wise midwife, bad, evil, that's what we've been saying throughout history. That's why wise women and midwives were burned at the stake for being witches, as we were talking about witches earlier. But that could be because she couldn't have children of her own, or she, you know, the whole just internalized misogyny. Well, I say internalized misogyny. I personally don't agree with SW. Myself, I think it demeans women, but we won't go into all that right now. But anyway,
here we go. Cancelled.
No,
I mean, to be fair, that does tie in a little bit to the La Llorona myth. Sorry if I've pronounced that wrong to any like Spanish speakers. I think in like in Mexico, where like the story is her children drowned or she drowned them. I've heard various versions, and now she like stalks other women's children,
other women, like steals them away.
Yeah, and like tries to steal the children, which obviously is just another bogeyman tale. But
if I can't have children, no one can.
Yeah, it's a very sort of similar vibe, which I could, you know, looking at sort of different representations throughout cultures, it's a very sort of similar vibe of, no, if I lose a child, then everyone else loses child. Even though in some of the stories she killed her children, which is it's a lot to unpack. But that's a lot of, there is a lot, especially in folklore, of it's always like wood nymphs or kelpies like becoming as these beautiful women to seduce young men off into the forest, and you know,
they never come back.
I'm researching the woodwife, or did a video on the woodwives recently, and the woodwives, it made me laugh because it's the first time I've actually really read a bit of folklore where young men, the woodwives pretend to be a handsome young man and lure women in, or in some cases it would just kidnap the woman from the village because it was meant to be like this hairy ape man, like who was just had insatiable sexual appetite. But what made me laugh was like this one line was like, on rare occasions there would be a female woodwife who would lure young men into the forest, and I'm like, how long has it got to be before a guy looks at a little ape woman, a wild woman like covered like filthy, living in the woods, just goes, no, that's what I'm about. I'm just gonna go off into the woods. This person who is talking in strange grunts and has a massive wooden stick they want to bonk me over the head with. This seems safe for a start. Like if I saw anything in the woods that looks vaguely humanoid and isn't human, I'm going to immediately assume it's not probably meant to be there and run in the other direction. I'm not going to think maybe I should stick my wongle in it. Like,
yeah, I mean, men have questionable taste in what they stick their bits and bobs in.
But the woodwives is mainly just like steal sheep, and it's and children as well. It likes to steal children into caves. But it was the fact that what really got me was the fact that the image in my head of all the depictions, there's actually, I need to, if I find it, I'll have to send it to you. That all of the depictions of like lady woodwives are the exact same hair head to toe, apart from the boobs. Like that's the bit that they would like, no hairy face, no hairy hands or feet, and then the boobs would have no hair. And I was like, what monk was sitting there doodling this in medieval England? Like, you know what? Like this is quite literally the closest I'm ever going to get. So we'll just remove the hair. I mean, to be fair, if you've locked a guy in like a chapel for his entire life, he's gonna it's gonna come out in some weird ways.
Yeah, I mean, why would you draw a pair of hairy breasts when you can draw a pair of bald Exactly. Pretty much. I know you got the gist of what I was saying.
I mean, and once it's done as well, you can't exactly go, mate, you need to change that. Like it's not, you can't just Control Z. It's going out now.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm wondering, why didn't the Portuguese authorities look into this as a lead with Madeleine McCann? If it steals children.
Oh, okay. My brain was like, why did they look into hairy woodwives' boobs? I don't know. I mean, the woodwives was seen in the Pyrenees in Spain. I do believe it was seen in the Pyrenees because it is a European a European wild man. She's not just British, which is something I discovered. It is interesting. But yeah, no, that's because I decided to do a little bit more folklore because I love the idea of British Bigfoot because it makes absolutely no sense. And that's why I love it. Because if it does turn out, because knowing the way the world works, the Sasquatch won't be real, but the Woodwoes would.
Yeah. Probably just like the missing link or something. It's like little hairy ape people who just minding their business.
Well, the more modern stories have the Woodwoes as more like a Neanderthal, so it's still quite hairy, which, if you make it more of a Neanderthal, because the original depictions are like a very, very hairy guy or like covered in leaves, sort of like very reminiscent of the Green Man. That, to me, like, if it's just like a Neanderthal, the stories of guys going off into the woods with a Woodwoes, I'm like, okay, I can get my head around that a bit more. Like,
yeah.
Like, I mean, it's still going to be a unique experience, but, yeah, no. The folklore is far too filled with people trying to get it on with creatures that they should not be getting on with.
Yeah, especially Greek mythology. Like swans and things.
Good old Zeus. I think he turns into like a not a lampshade. They didn't have lamps back then. It was some kind of like shade or ramp.
Oil lamp.
Like, yeah, that it wouldn't have been oil lamp. Oil lamp. I'm losing my mind. It was some kind of piece of furniture, and somehow that works as a seductive technique. I mean, there are some stories about Zeus that are a little bit more. Bit
dodgy, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but it's not really like offensive to say it. Like, I know a lot of like people who are into Greek mythology who are like, yeah, no, Zeus was a bit dodgy. In fact, if Zeus's antics with human women and other goddesses really does spur about 98% of Greek mythology. Like,
yeah. I mean, he should be on a register, but
yeah. I mean, at one point with Persephone, he helps in one of the stories. Again, you always have to remember there's like 8 versions of all of the stories all the time. So like one of the stories where with Persephone, which is Zeus's daughter with is it with Aphrodite? I believe no, it's not with Aphrodite.
No, I think Aphrodite, she only did Hephaestus and Ares. I think she was quite a good girl. But weirdly.
I can't remember the goddess who is the mother of Persephone. Anyways, Persephone in one of the stories is Zeus's daughter, and he helps Hades capture her so that she can become Hades' wife in the underworld. Then obviously she eats the fruit and then trapped for half the year because Zeus feels guilty and he tries to negotiate with Hades. And I'm like, my guy really just condemned his own daughter. Like, he helped in the... Is it even kidnapping if your dad helps you get kidnapped to marry your uncle? Because let's not forget, Hades is Zeus's brother.
It just sounds like a bit of trafficking. A bit of trafficking to me.
Greek mythology is absolutely wild, and I absolutely love it for it. It's wild, especially like stories like Arachne and all that. Arachne freaks me out because I am arachnophobic, so I don't like. Sorry to Arachne if you're listening. Maybe don't lose a contest to Athena or win a contest to Athena and get turned into a spider. Which is pretty big. I think that's probably one of the worst things that can happen to a person. I think I'd rather
to be turned into a spider.
Yeah, like imagine just forever being like, just like, oh, I'm so scared of spiders. Looking into a mirror, oh shit! Like every 30 seconds.
Oh my god.
But yes, back to the topic of this podcast, Jack the Ripper. I mean, to be fair, there's some really funny theories out there as well. Like one is that it was all aliens, because there's always an alien conspiracy theory.
I've never heard this one.
Have you never heard the alien one? It's not a well thought out one. It's mainly from like internet message boards. But the theory is, you know how the cattle mutilations happened in America and a lesser extent over here. Oh
yeah, and there were also big scorch marks in the grass and all this.
Basically, they were saying like, oh well, the ovaries were missing on this one, so clearly it must have been aliens experimenting. And I'm like, but why would they put them back? Why?
Why drape them over her shoulder?
Yeah,
which is what happened to one of them, you know.
Maybe the aliens were like doing experiments, but like, shall we have a laugh while we're doing this? Shall we freak everyone out? Shall we, like, one time, they don't report it, but one time there's just like a load of aliens with like strings, like doing puppet shows of the body. And then, I mean, there's some insane depictions in the media as well. Like, my favourite one of, favourite version of Jack the Ripper in the media is the primeval version where it was a velociraptor. Like,
I feel like I'm uneducated now because I've never heard of any of these, but they are very amusing.
Yeah, I know the sillier stuff. You know the actual theories and the proper stuff that may have happened. I'm like, this sounds funny. I'll remember this. But no, the Velociraptor one I love because that was the stupidest depiction ever. Because it makes no sense because the Velociraptor would have no motive and it would be killing a lot more people than random ladies of the night.
There'd be like the fact that there's a pattern as well, i.e., you know, their line of work and so forth, and the fact that they were all in the same area. Somehow, I think he'd be trotting up to Islington and killing a few, you know, bankers and things. Do bankers live in Islington? Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Jeremy Corbyn lives in Islington. They do him in as well. The Velociraptor.
Okay. So anyways, Jack the Ripper. So I did read somewhere that perhaps one of the motives he or she had was that they had a sister who was a lady of the night, and she was like really badly assaulted, and then they went on to attack other ladies of the night in revenge. It's a weird one, but again, it's random stuff I've seen on the internet.
Yeah, that feels like someone really reached really far up their jacksie to withdraw that one.
I'm gonna have to share this with every American I know because we've sounded so English. This entire podcast has been so English. I'm now determined to fit as many English phrases as I can into the remaining.
I'm going to start talking Cockney rhyming slang in a minute.
I'll go full Essex and you go full Cockney.
Bit of squaddy slang in there as well.
Between us, that we'll just need a full translator in the corner, like, you know, the old CBBC translators, the ones that did sign language in the early hours videos. So what other interesting historical facts about London do you think people won't know?
So the plague pit ones are interesting, and they're popular as well on TikTok because people just be going about their business, grabbing, you know, a meal deal from Sainsbury's and Whitechapel, and they don't realise that there's like a load of corpses, like plague-ridden corpses under their feet and in the car park, apparently.
Absolutely charming.
Because, like, obviously Whitechapel at that point in the 17th century, like, people always imagine London as just being as it is now. But back then, like, I've looked at pictures of the Royal London when it was first built, and it was literally just green fields with a big building in the slap bang in the middle of it. Obviously, it was all just fields, so people were just going to sort of bury their dead in a field and outside of London. And then eventually, you know, as London expanded, it all got built on top of slums and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, if you look at the size of London back when it was Londinium, it
was a square mile, wasn't it?
I think a little bit bigger. I mean, Boudica did do some remodelling, shrink it down a bit. 70,000 people she killed in one sweep. Like, that is, like, I mean, if she was playing Call of Duty, that is an incredible kill-death ratio. So I've never played Call of Duty, so I can't tell you if that joke is even accurate.
I played it with my ex-boyfriend, and he told me I sucked.
See, I'm worse. I've only played Battlefield. I've upset every Call of Duty player listening now is cringing so hard because yes, I prefer Battlefield because you get to fly planes in Battlefield. You don't Call of Duty. That sounds really lame. That's the lamest thing I've ever said in my life. I mean, it is. I mean, I love with London. My favourite thing is the Great Fire of London, because it is the. I mean, it's one of the many stupid parts of British history where it's just absolute oversight. And I love the fact to this day we still blame that random baker.
I know, bless him. Probably wasn't even him. They thought it was the Dutch at one point, just being terrorists.
It wouldn't make sense.
Because, you know, we've been at war with them.
I mean, the Dutch did eat their own prime minister, so you don't know what they're capable of. We have been going for nearly an hour now, so we'll probably
just let me know when you want to, like, shoo me away.
Oh, no, it's fine. I can. I was about to say it sounds really well. I was about to say I can go all night, and then I was like, no, actually, that does sound a bit. Considering the subject matter, that does sound a bit suspect.
A little bit.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose we'll sort of close it off. I think this is actually the most on track I've stayed in a podcast. Like when I did my first one, we started off in the Soviet Union, ended up talking about dragons in China, and then the second one was talking about Ethelflaed, Lady of Mercia. We ended up talking about UFOs and Atlantis.
Jesus.
And then episode 3 started off in ancient Egypt and ended up in World War II. Which, yeah, I mean, is there any interesting World War II London sort of Blitz stories, you know? Because I know that's a very unique period of history for London.
Yeah, so there's some really interesting bits and bobs to do with the Blitz. I'll link it to my whole Haunted London thing, because that seems to be quite popular on my TikTok. So Bethnal Green Station in East London, you know, East London. That was hit during the Blitz. No, sorry, it wasn't hit. That's a lie. I was thinking of Balham. That was hit quite badly, and there was a flood basically, and everyone who was sleeping down there drowned to death, which wasn't nice. But anyway, Bethnal Green. I think the military were testing something nearby that made big boom noise, and it frightened people who were going down into the station as the air raid sirens were going, because they've all panicked and someone's fallen over and they've all basically piled on top of each other. And like beyond that, as they were pulling the bodies out, you know, there were children who were just crushed and just blue in the face from where they'd suffocated to death. And it was just awful, you know, it was just basically a mass of bodies. And apparently now, late at night in the station, like staff have heard, just like it starts off very quiet, but just screams getting louder and louder and louder and louder in the sort of ticket hall staircase area, which is where it happened. And then they'll go up there and it'll stop. And it's really weird.
I mean, it does make sense, because normally when there's anything to do with the supernatural, which I always say to people I have an open mind, but I don't directly believe in, even with my own experiences, I try and sort of chalk out, like, could I have been half asleep? Was I sort of imagining it? And it's that normally when you get stuff like that, obviously there was a great deal of pain in the event, obviously, understandably. Yeah. And that's normally when you get the most supernatural events occur, when there's a lot of pain. It's never like, oh, they really loved each other and the ghosts are just forever like dancing in the moonlight. There's never a happy story like that. It's always like, and then he murdered his entire family and all of their close friends, and that's why they haunt the mansion. Like, it's always that sort of storyline. And I think that would make sense, because the idea of a ghost is it's unfinished business. They've got stuff they need to do before they can fully move on. And I think that is, I mean, maybe that's less of a ghost, more of an echo of the past. Like that much pain in one moment, like sent out towards. It'd be interesting to see if the time that they hear the screams start coincides when the actual, like, the event occurred.
Yeah, that would be interesting. And I know that one of the staff members who reported it, he felt a pressure on his chest as well, like he couldn't breathe, as if he was being crushed. That's interesting as well, because obviously that's how they died. Maybe they were trying to communicate with them and say, please, you know, like, help me, this is how I'm feeling as I'm dying. And I know this is a bit off topic, but it reminds me of something that my dad witnessed when he was in the police. He went to, I think it might have been St. Thomas's, not entirely sure, there's 2 hospitals I've got in mind, but I think it's St. Thomas's Hospital, and a nurse was murdered there in the lift, and apparently she kind of pops up whenever someone in uniform, particularly police officers, step into the lift, and basically you'll feel like this feeling of panic and dread in the lift, and the lift will go all the way down to the basement instead of going to the floor, the designated floor you've wanted it to go to. And apparently, you know, it's because like she tends to kind of show up around police officers and stuff because she's saying, please help me, you know, I don't know, she thinks she's still alive, I don't know, like, I've been murdered, I am being murdered, I don't know how it all works with ghosts, but she just wants help. So
I mean, I can only assume that they, because if you're in that sort of it's not corporeal form, no, like energy form, you know what I mean? Like spiritual form,
like not a manifestation. Yeah.
The only way I think the conscious mind could make sense of it would be, I must still be alive. You wouldn't be able to comprehend.
Exactly. I don't think they're aware. It's like in Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Where the doctor thinks he's still, sorry, spoiler alert. The doctor thinks he's still alive and he's a ghost.
I mean, the movie's been out for a good old time. There will still be someone in the comments going, I was going to see this tomorrow. It's one of those things where, like, if it's an old film, like I had Sixth Sense spoiled for me ages ago. Ironically, I was planning to see it the next day, and I was we'll give it. And I was like, oh, well, this is pointless now. But same Night Shyamalan actually did.
I can never pronounce his name.
M. Night Shyamalan, he's a good director. He's just very up his own rectum.
But at least he doesn't do close-ups of feet like other directors. We
will not diss Tarantino in this podcast. Tarantino is an amazing director. He does have a weird fixation, but apparently so does the rest of the internet now. That is a weird sort of pace of internet culture.
Have you not noticed the stuff I get sent on my Instagram that I post on my story? Always to do with my feet.
It's always like. I always see it, and I'm like, people are too confident. People are too open. Like, I would not be happily messaging people this. Like, the amount that I'm just like, how have you got such a lack of shame? But that's why it's the running joke. Like, people always ask me, why do you, like, when I'm indoors and I'm recording TikToks and YouTube videos in my room, people are like, why do you wear shoes in your videos? And I'm like, Have you seen the internet culture? I'm not taking a risk. I don't want to be scrolling the internet and someone's like, hey, did you know you're on WikiFeet? I don't, and that is a real thing. It is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that. It will happen someday. I've just come to accept that it's going to happen at some point because that's part of being on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm careful with what I post on Instagram, but even like I posted a picture of me in like a red blouse and a skirt and stockings, and some guy weirdly from TikTok as well, like an urban explorer, messaged me saying, oh, I've just found this picture of you on this weird it was like a weird like revenge corn site, basically attached with a message attached, like a forum with a message attached saying, does anyone have any pictures of her? This is her username on Instagram. Does anyone have any further pictures that I can, look at? And it turned out that it was this guy who sent it to me, because he sent it to me the moment it was posted. And I was like, what are the odds? You literally just posted that. He was playing, playing like hero and being like, oh, I reported it for you and all this and this, that, and the other. And oh, I'm so lovely. Like, give me a chance. And I'm like, you literally posted that. Do you think I'm a mug?
That is what we call a white knight.
Yeah, and he kept like because I kept blocking him and being like, don't talk to me, I know that was you. And he kept making new accounts to I assume keep accessing the stuff I post on my Instagram, and also to continue trying to persuade me that no, it was not him that posted that picture on that very out of the way forum that nobody uses.
Yeah, it's all very, very. I mean, the key question is, why is he on that forum in the first place?
That's why that's what I said to him.
I was like, how are you on this forum? Oh, I'm here to. It's like in the Chris Hansen episodes where they're like, oh, I came to warn them about the dangers of talking to strangers online. There's a really good one, because they're all on YouTube now. There's a really good episode where he brings pizza and he offers Chris Hansen a slice of pizza, and I'm like, I'm just sitting there like, how in that situation is that your reaction? Yeah, no, that is. Oh, Chris Hansen was a unique period of the internet. And no, to be fair, I said earlier we stayed on track. We have officially, like, we started off on Spring-Heeled Jack and we have ended up on Chris Hansen. Oh dearie me.
And Wikifeet.
Yeah. The logical progression of any podcast. We'll sort of round up sort of semi to the Great Fire of London with Charles II, because a lot of people hate Charles II for being a party animal, but he did help. Like in the Great Fire of London, he was riding backwards and forwards, and he was like helping, trying to put out the fires. So I think he gets. I mean, yeah, he's a rich, like that's rich and royal people throughout history. You've got a lot of money that you're gonna use it for decadent things. At least he didn't go like Caligula and shag all of his sisters.
And at least he didn't end up in Pizza Express or Pizza Hut or whatever it was, just sweating.
You know what? I'm leaving that one in. We could get away. We could get away with that one.
Because no names are mentioned, so it's fine.
Yeah, no names are mentioned. I do actually have a condition where I can't sweat, so.
Can we swap?
Oh, that's the best interview in British history. But yeah, no, I do feel sorry for that poor little baker. I mean, to be fair, the story goes that the kid was like stealing some bread and it distracted him and the sparks got on the floor. I
heard that he just went to bed and just left the fire on. Because he was irresponsible.
It's one of those things where it's like a million different stories. I'm not gonna lie. There's a high chance that it was started on purpose. Perhaps that was how we got off the topic because we were talking about the Dutch doing it. Perhaps it was the Dutch at the. I mean, that led to a lot of violence for Dutch people living in London at the time. That would, as it always does, when it's like, oh, it might have been this.
And then there we go, hate crime.
Yep. I'm fairly certain. Oh, this is the time. Yeah, we'll probably. Yeah, we've been going for an hour and 6 minutes, so we'll use the last 10 minutes up, and then we'll skedaddle. But you know, I mean, there was one that, as there always is, there was one that was like, and the Jews did it, and there's always at least one, and which is the only good thing I will say about Oliver Cromwell. I hate that man. He is a genocidal, disgusting maniac. But he did help the Jewish people get back into England. He did help that population out. So that is a good thing, and I will always admit that. And I only bring that up to counteract the negative energy I've brought out because we have somehow managed to seep into anti-Semitism a couple of times. Which is...
Yeah, I mean, I've got Jewish heritage, so I do appreciate it being spoken about.
Yeah, it is something that needs to be... I mean, it's weird how often it comes up in history.
Yeah.
It's a bit worrying. That no matter what part of history you're studying, there's always this.
It's occurring.
Yeah. From quite literally the get go, really. Good old Egypt coming in and getting the ball rolling. And then the rest of history sort of followed suit.
Very sad.
Yeah, but on a positive note, Jack the Ripper can't hurt anyone anymore because he's definitely dead.
No, unless he is a paranormal creature like Spring-Heeled Jack and decides to return, 100 years later.
Yeah. I mean, there was a theory that he was a vampire.
Yeah, I heard that one. Not too keen.
Yeah, I mean, the big hole in that one, no pun intended, the big hole in that one comes from the fact that there's no vampire puncture wounds. I don't feel like a vampire, and that's how we're going to end the podcast. Yeah. So pros and cons of the podcast. Obviously, there is. I didn't know that there was potentially an anti-Semitic link towards Jack the Ripper. I didn't know that, and it's definitely interesting information that I now have to compartmentalize and deal with. But yeah, no, I think it's interesting, Spring Hill Jack and all that. And yeah, before we go, is there anything you want to plug? Like any you going on to? I keep saying you get a YouTube channel. You're gonna have to start one at some point.
I have one, but I've not posted on it yet, and I have it like linked on my socials, and it just sits there, just stagnant. So I need to get cameras and stuff, and just. But when I do start it, I will do a podcast as well, and you're going to be invited. Brilliant. So return the favour.
So for now, is there anything you want to plug, like any socials?
TikTok is History of London, and there we go. I think that's what people would enjoy the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Groovy lemon smoothie.
So thank you so much for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. And yeah, I'll end recording now. And yeah, thank you for coming on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
I will do too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.